Hello and welcome to Business 7. In this week's program, we will be focusing on COP27, the Global Climate Summit, which took place in Egypt. We will catch up with the leaders of Bank Windhoek who attended COP27 and will share their thoughts with us. We will also bring you African news on COP27. But first, let's take a look on the stories that you can read in this week's Business 7, the printed edition, which you can find in Republikein, Algemene Zeitung and Namibian Sun, or of course you can read the stories on the website of the papers. Now we're leading on the front page. We take a look at the health of the medical aid industry in Namibia. Not looking very good there, with the industry suffering a loss in the second quarter of this year. Of course, those figures are from NAMFISA. Not only that, the data shows that since the second quarter of last year, that the medical aid industry in Namibia only managed to report 1 quarter of a profit. We're also looking at mining. We have an article on Recon Africa, of course very controversial in Namibia. Now they reported the findings of one of their wells last week. Not very promising results at all, not economically viable hydrocarbons found, and we're looking at how the market dealt with that. It caused a massive plunge in Recon's share price. Also looking at Osino Resources, their plans for the Twin Hills gold mine in Namibia. And then of course this week the world celebrated, if one has to look at it like that, but the 8th billionth person was born on a planet Earth. And in Business 7, we take a look at where Africa will fit into Earth's growing population.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
Bank Windhoek sent a delegation to COP27 in Egypt, and Yolanda Nel of Namibian Media Holdings caught up with James Chapman. He is the Executive Director of Specialist Finance and Retail Banking at Bank Windhoek to talk about the bank's presence at the Climate Summit.
Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, we are joined with James Chapman and Darwan Westbier of Bank Windhoek, and they are currently at the COP27 event taking place in Egypt. Thank you so much for making the time while you are so far away.
No, very privileged to be here and to be having this discussion with you.
I am going to give you the floor, and you can just tell us what are you doing there and what's important.
No, thank you, Yolanda. Yeah, I think COP27 in Egypt this year, it marks the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the United Nations framework for prevention of climate change. I think following a lot of commitments that was made, engagements that happened at COP26 last year, this is really about an urgent call for action, and hence COP27 has also launched under the slogan Together on Implementation. This is really to emphasize the need of an urgent response and urgent action required in terms of climate change. I think that has been the theme going around all week already, that we are at a point where commitments and negotiations are all good and well, but at some point we need to step up in terms of our execution. But coming back to the investment required, from a global perspective, we would require between 3 and 6 trillion US dollars annually to be invested to actually achieve our goal, and bringing it a bit closer to home. If you think about Africa, Africa would require about 270 billion US dollar a year, was the latest estimate. And what's so significant about that is that it is actually 9 times the current 30 billion climate financing that is flowing in Africa. So it's a substantial step up in terms of what is required. So, and I think that is where us as financial institutions like Capricorn Group and Windhoek and Gaborone and Capricorn Asset Management can really play a role in really facilitating those funding flows, because about 75% of climate finance is flowing and is done by private sector. So I think we're well positioned in order to assist in that, and that is also a big part of why we are at COP and this delegation. And it's really an honor for us to be a part of the Namibian delegation that came here to look at these issues and how we can best address and solve them to make that much required impact on climate change.
Can you quickly tell us what are some of the challenges we are facing?
Yeah, I think from a financial perspective, a lot of these climate change initiative comes down to executing on projects, implementing projects, mitigation or adaptation, really to meet that goal. And again, from our perspective, as Capricorn Group and Bank Windhoek and Gaborone and Capricorn Asset Management, again, it comes down to accessing that finance. As you've mentioned, a lot of developing countries or developed countries have pledged large numbers in terms of availability of funds for projects, but accessing that, especially from a developing country point of view, I think one of the key challenges, looking at the compliance requirements or really the process to access that funding, I do think that is something that needs urgent attention, but one can also not wait for it to be done, and that's why we are here to proactively engage and see what other mechanisms and how can we structure things differently to really speed up that process of accessing these financing for these projects. And I think Ron can also elaborate on what Bank Windhoek has actually done to date in terms of this fight against climate. That also speaks to the development goals at the COP.
We return to Yolanda Nel. She spoke to Ruan Bestbier. He is the Group Head of Sustainability at Bank Windhoek, and he talks about the role the bank can play in climate change financing.
There is going to be a discussion on sustainable finance. What exactly is meant by this term and why is it important?
Thank you. Okay, so sustainable finance is a concept that has been floating around the corporate sphere for many years, and sustainability is crucial to unlock favorable funding. So sustainable finance can be known as favorable funding. So the ways that the bank has tried to accumulate our own sources of funding is by issuing our own green and sustainability bond, which we listed on the Namibian Stock Exchange. Back in the first green bond we issued was in December 2018. So that's one of the initiatives that the bank used to raise our own funding in the local market from local investors to support local projects. As James mentioned, there's a lot of additional funding sources available in the market, but the terms and conditions normally associated by accessing some of the funding is really not creating a conducive environment for us to design and develop products that we could roll out to the market in order to assist in this transition to a low carbon and climate resilient economy. So the way that we've done is that we've raised the sustainability bond. We issued the sustainability bond. We raised additional sources of funding, which we then ring fence to finance qualifying projects within the borders of Namibia. So Bank Windhoek and Capricorn Group became the first commercial bank in the Southern African region to use this innovative financial instrument to raise our own sources of funding. So this is just one of the ways in which the private sector can contribute to fighting climate change. by creating a conducive environment and also designing innovative financial products which we can avail to our client base, and also to motivate and facilitate them to invest in green assets and going green. We've seen a substantial reduction in the cost of renewable energy technology, especially with rooftop solar installation or rooftop solar equipment. So that has sparked, that's created an environment in the local market for many individual small business owners, as well as farm holders, to understand or to consider investing in rooftop solar installations to reduce their operational cash flows, and also allow them to reinvest some of the cash that they can save by investing in renewable energy to employ and develop their business and or their household even further. So at this stage, we could see in COP27, it's really the world has moved on, and everyone is collaborating. And I think the theme of the COP of this year is implementing together. So COP26, we've seen a lot of commitments being made, discussions that going to create a positive environment in Namibia. But at this year, we would like to see action. And we are eagerly looking forward to seeing what type of facility and concessional funding can flow to Namibia, which the private sector can then utilize to pass on to the Namibian economy.
Every day, you make choices that make you legendary. Journey together with us on the path to securing your legacy as a member of the League of Legends. With the Select Platinum Bundle Fee Premium Bank offering, you will access tools that will enable you to thrive. If you earn 850,000 Namibian dollars per annum or more, you can apply for this offering today via bankwindhoek.com.na for only 447 Namibian dollars per month. Bank Windhoek, a member of Capricorn Group.
The president of the African Development Bank also spoke at COP27 in Egypt, and it was all about Africa being allowed to use its gas resources for power. Reuters felt this report.
To go straight into green infrastructure, and we will rate. From the point of gas that you were saying, yes, what this has shown us is this. We've got to diversify energy sources. Also that it's not just about access to energy, it's about affordability of energy. It's also about energy security. Therefore, it is very important that Europe diversifies its energy sources. And guess what? Africa can be a very important source of Europe in terms of access to gas. My interest is how Africa uses natural gas as part of its energy mix to provide electricity for 600 million people today that don't have access to electricity. But let me just be clear. When it comes to the issue of gas, the African Development Bank, we are the leader on this continent on renewable energy. We are putting 85% of our resources into renewable energy generation. But I recognize that renewables are very highly variable in terms of supply. So you got to make sure you have a balanced energy grid. And so mixing gas is very important for Africa. But I know some people will say, well, if you use gas, in fact, you probably will be contributing to more emissions, but not in the case of Africa, because even if Africa uses all of its natural gas for power, you know how much it would contribute to emissions? 0.67. That's all. So Africa must have natural gas to complement its renewable energy to assure access, affordability, and security of power supply. I think we must recognize the special nature of Africa. Africa has the highest level of energy poverty in the world. We will maximize the sun We will maximize wind. We will maximize hydro and geothermal potential. Yes. This alliance for green infrastructure in Africa will green our energy.
While Namibia and its cities are seen as one of the cleanest countries in Africa, plastic pollution is a big problem. Therefore, it's up to each of us to do what we can to reduce the use of plastic, especially single-use plastic bags. At Liberty Life Namibia, we've taken the decision to turn all our old branding items into reusable shopping bags. It's a way in which we can drive sustainability and look after our most important stakeholder, our environment. If you also believe in sustainability and would like more information, please get in touch. Liberty Life Namibia. In it with you.
It wasn't all about COP27 in the past week when it comes to business in Africa. We're looking at some business highlights on the continent as compiled by Reuters.
Here are 5 business stories making the headlines in sub-Saharan Africa this week. African nations must be allowed to develop fossil fuel resources to help lift their people out of poverty, government said at the COP27 climate talks in Egypt. Echoing comment from other African nations, Maggie Chino, Namibia's petroleum commissioner, said wealthy countries had failed to deliver promised funding that would help them to expand clean energy instead of exploiting their fossil fuel resources. Goldfields shares jumped 21% on Wednesday after a deal to acquire Yamana Gold broke down, and the Canadian miner said it would pay $300 million break fee. The shares rose to their highest level since the end of May, reversing the plunge that followed news of the planned acquisition of Yamana. An appeals court in Milan has rejected Nigeria's request for compensation of just under $1.1 billion against Italian energy group Eni and Shell in civil proceedings related to a $1.3 billion oil field deal. In July, prosecutors dropped related criminal proceedings in one of the oil industry's biggest alleged corruption cases. Shell said it was pleased the civil proceedings had been dismissed. A South African court has overturned an earlier order halting construction of Amazon's new African headquarters in Cape Town. In March, the court initially agreed to halt the project, saying that in the absence of proper consultation, the fundamental rights to culture and heritage of indigenous groups, particularly the Khoi and San First Nations peoples, were under threat. And finally, Transparency International has called for an investigation of possible criminal actions in Madagascar's lychee trade. The anti-corruption group said it wants to probe links between French companies in Madagascar's lychee industry and other organizations in the country, in case Madagascan farmers were being deprived earning their fair share of money.
Thank you so much to FNB for this opportunity. Thank you so much to FNB. What an experience. I never got to do shopping in 5 minutes, but look at all this.
To end off the program, we're taking a look at carbon pricing and exactly what that is, of course, also in the light of COP27. We're playing out by video, or with a video by the International Monetary Fund. And from me, it's goodbye until next week.
Hi, I'm Wala, and I work here at the IMF in a building full of economists. And you're here because you want to know about carbon? What's that got to do with the economy? We'll get to that. First, what even is carbon? It's an incredibly versatile element. It can take a million different forms, from coal to diamonds. It's naturally occurring and in almost everything, including you and me. It's what we use to keep the lights on, the cars on the road, and the planes in the air. And these are nice things, but when we use carbon fuel, it emits carbon dioxide, or CO2, and that causes all kinds of problems. CO2, along with a handful of other gases, traps sunlight, heating up the planet. This is causing extreme weather, rising sea levels, and droughts. It also makes people sick. It's pretty bad. And if we don't completely stop dumping CO2 into the air by 2050, it'll get so much worse. So why do we keep emitting so much carbon dioxide if we know it's no good for the planet or for us? Well, carbon-based fuel is cheap to use, in large part because there's no price tag on the damage it causes. But what if there were? That's where carbon pricing comes in. It's an idea where we're paying not just for the energy, but for the pollution we're emitting as a result of using that energy. In that way, carbon pricing makes it so that energy sources that don't emit CO2, like solar and wind, more affordable than the dirty stuff. See? I told you we'd get to the economics of it all. With carbon pricing, governments, companies, and individuals are more likely to switch to sustainable, cleaner, and cheaper forms of energy. We'd consume less and invest more in renewable sources. But we can't expect countries to switch entirely to clean energy sources overnight. And we have to make sure that the transition away from carbon energy is fair for everyone. It's an example of what experts call mitigation, a fancy word used to talk about stabilizing the climate by bringing emissions down to zero. It's part of what we have to do to literally keep the planet livable, and fast, because 2050 isn't that far off. Carbon pricing alone isn't an instant fix, but it is something that this building full of economists say is key to changing the equation, making it more expensive to keep polluting and cheaper to save the planet, adding up to zero emissions. That way, we can keep some of our nice things while keeping things nice.
In Business 7, you get news on current economic, financial, and business matters in Namibia. The weekly show features interviews with experts and in-depth analysis of burning issues in a way that caters for ordinary Namibians and business connoisseurs alike. We crunch the numbers that matter, decipher statistics that shape Namibian lives, discuss smart money, and explore the impact of global development locally. Money makes the world go round, so catch us on NTV, oneup2.com, and the Facebook platforms of the Namibian Sun, Republikane, Algemene Zeitung, and Namibia Media Holdings. For news-related or advertising queries, please contact B7 at synergy.com.na.
Careers Bistro focuses on the movers and shakers in the corporate world. It takes the content of the Careers Hub that is inserted every Friday in the 3 NMH dailies, Republikane, Namibian Sun, and Algemene Zeitung, to viewers on social media. This show is broadcasted on NTV, oneup2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Careers Hub, The Republikane, Algemene Zeitung, Namibian Sun, and Namibia Media Holdings. Careers Bistro focuses on car interviews, career motivational videos, the ups and downs of different careers, keeping in touch with business and more. For career-related content or advertising queries, please contact zone@synergy.com.na.